The Koprulu sector had always believed its wars were inevitable. 3 species locked in a cycle of blood and ash, each one convinced the other had to burn for the galaxy to survive. They were wrong. Because inevitability was what happened when you stopped looking for another way. And on a backwater colony called Mars Sara, in the middle of a war, nobody thought could end a blue box appeared. The sky over Mars Sara tasted like copper and ozone. Dominion dropships screamed overhead, their engines drowning out the screams below. Plasma rounds chewed through prefab housing like it was made of paper. It probably was. The Confederacy had never cared much about quality, and the Dominion cared even less. Jim Raynor had seen this before. Different planet, same story. Civilians running soldiers, shooting, and nobody asking why anymore. He grabbed a woman by the arm, middle-aged, clutching a child, and shoved them toward the mining tunnel entrance. "Go! Don't stop!" She didn't thank him. Smart. Gratitude took time they didn't have. Something else screamed overhead. Not a dropship. Zerg. Raynor's jaw tightened. Of course. Dominion always brought friends to the party, whether they wanted them or not. A hydralisk skittered around the corner, spine ridges twitching. Jim's rifle came up, smooth muscle memory older than the scars on his hands. He fired. The creature shrieked and fell, green ichor pooling on the dust. Behind him, metal groaned. Not an explosion, not the sound of something breaking. The sound of something arriving. Jim turned. There was a box in the middle of the street. Blue, battered, completely out of place, like someone had dropped a piece of ancient earth into the middle of a firefight and forgotten to remove it. The door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, thin, wearing a coat that looked like it had survived more than it should have. When he looked around, taking in the chaos, the bodies, the smoke, his expression was calm, almost curious. "Oh," the stranger said. "This is earlier than I thought." Jim stared. "The hell are you?" The man glanced at him, and for just a second his eyes were older than anything Jim had ever seen. Then he smiled, and the weight vanished like it had never been there at all. "Bit busy right now," the stranger said cheerfully. "You might want to duck." Jim ducked. A plasma round sizzled through the space where his head had been. The stranger didn't flinch, just stepped to the side like he'd already known it was coming. He pulled something from his coat, looked like a pen, sounded like a hornet's nest, and pointed it at the Dominion gunship banking overhead. The ship's engines stuttered. Died. It dropped like a brick, hit the ground 3 blocks away, and stayed down. "Right," the stranger said, tucking the device away. "Now, you were asking something." Jim's rifle was still up, aimed squarely at the man's chest. "Who are you?" "The doctor." He said it like it answered everything. Then he frowned, looking past Jim. "How many civilians left in that building?" "Too many. Dominion's got the exits locked down." "Well, that's just rude." The doctor turned back to the blue box, popped the door open wider. "Get them in here." Jim blinked. "In there?" "Yes. It's a box." "It's a brilliant box," the doctor said, already moving toward the building. "Come on. Time's not exactly generous today." Against every instinct Jim had developed over the last 10 years of war, he followed. The building was a nightmare. Smoke thick enough to choke on fire licking up the walls, and somewhere deeper inside the wet hiss of Zerg. The doctor moved through it like he was taking a walk, pulling a sobbing man out from under a collapsed beam, guiding a cluster of children toward the exit, with a hand on the youngest one's shoulder. "This way," he kept saying. quiet, certain. "You're all right. This way." And they believed him. Jim didn't know why, but they did. By the time they stumbled back outside, Jim was carrying an elderly woman who'd refused to leave without her cat. The doctor had somehow acquired a baby. He held it like he'd done it before, one hand supporting the head, the other keeping the child tucked against his chest. "In the box," the doctor said. The civilians hesitated. Jim understood. He'd hesitated too, because the box was barely large enough for one person, let alone 20. But the doctor just opened the door, stepped inside, and the baby in his arms stopped crying. One by one they followed. Jim went last. He had to. Someone had to make sure no one got left behind. He stepped through the door and stopped. Jim had been in battle cruisers. He'd seen Protoss carriers from the inside, all light and impossible angles. Nothing. Nothing had prepared him for stepping through a door and finding a cathedral where a closet should be. Warm light, endless space, and a low hum that felt less like machinery and more like breathing. "What?" Jim's voice came out rough. He cleared his throat, tried again. "What the hell is this?" The doctor glanced up from where he was handing the baby back to its mother. "Oh, right. Sorry, should have mentioned. It's bigger on the inside." "That's not..." Jim's hand went to the wall. Solid, real, not a hologram. "This doesn't make sense." "I know." The doctor's smile was sympathetic, almost kind. "Takes a bit of getting used to. How is this possible?" "Long story, brilliant engineering, bit of temporal mechanics." The doctor waved a hand vaguely. "Think of it like, well, actually don't think of it too hard. Tends to give people headaches." Jim looked around. The civilians were huddled together near what looked like a control console, all brass and crystal, and nothing that belonged in any ship he'd ever seen. A few of them were crying. Most were just staring, same as him. "You're not Dominion," Jim said slowly. "God, no." "Not Confederacy either." "Absolutely not." "Then what are you?" The doctor tilted his head, considering. "Someone who doesn't think wars have to be inevitable." Before Jim could respond, the doctor's expression changed. The lightness vanished. His whole body went still in a way that made Jim's skin crawl. "What?" Jim's hand went to his rifle. "What is it?" The doctor didn't answer. He crossed to the console in 3 long strides, fingers moving over controls that didn't look like controls. The hum in the room shifted lower, darker, like something growling. "No," the doctor said quietly. "No, that's not right." "What's not right?" "That." The doctor pointed at nothing Jim could see. But his face had gone cold, actually cold, like someone had turned off the sun behind his eyes. "Someone's pulling on time, and they're doing it badly." Jim had no idea what that meant. But he knew one thing for certain. The man standing in front of him, the one who'd saved 20 lives without firing a shot, who smiled like a fool and moved like he already knew how the world was going to end. He was afraid. And that was worse than any Zerg, any Dominion gunship, any war Jim had ever fought. Because if something could scare this man, then Mar Sara wasn't the beginning. It was just the first crack. The civilians didn't leave immediately. Some couldn't. A few were injured burn scars and shrapnel wounds the doctor patched up with supplies that appeared from corridors Jim hadn't noticed before. The rest were simply too afraid to step back outside. Jim understood that too. He stood near the door, the regular-sized door that opened into impossible space, and watched the doctor work. The man moved with practiced efficiency, wrapping bandages, murmuring reassurances, never once losing that odd gentleness he wore like armor. "You've done this before," Jim said. The doctor didn't look up from the child whose arm he was splinting. "Once or twice?" "How many times is once or twice?" "Lost count." The doctor finished the splint, ruffled the kid's hair. "There. Good as new. Well, good as newish. Don't punch any walls for a week." The kid managed a weak smile. Jim's communicator crackled. Dominion frequencies, which meant they were still sweeping the area. He killed the sound. "We can't stay here." "No," the doctor agreed. He stood brushing dust off his coat. It didn't help. "But they can't stay out there either." "So what do you suggest?" The doctor opened his mouth to answer, and froze. The humming in the walls changed pitch again. Not the dark growl from before. Something else. Higher, almost like a warning. "Oh," the doctor said softly. "We have company." The door swung open. The thing that stepped through wasn't human. Jim's rifle came up on instinct. The civilians gasped, pressed back against the far wall. And the doctor just sighed like he'd been expecting this. The creature was tall, taller than any human, moving with a slow, deliberate grace that reminded Jim of glaciers. Its armor caught the light, ancient and pristine, etched with symbols that hurt to look at too long. Where a face should have been, there was only a smooth surface and two eyes that glowed with pale fire. Protoss. Jim had never seen one up close. Most people hadn't. The Protoss kept to themselves, fought their own wars, and generally treated humanity like a particularly noisy infestation. This one looked directly at the doctor and spoke. The voice was wrong. Not wrong like broken wrong, like it existed in too many dimensions, at once layered harmonics that Jim felt in his chest as much as heard. But he understood it. Perfectly. "You are the anomaly," the Protoss said. Not a question, a statement. The disturbance in the psionic field originates from this vessel. Jim blinked. He'd heard the words in perfect English. But the Protoss hadn't been speaking English. He was sure of it. The doctor stepped forward, hands loose at his sides, posture open. "Hello?" "Yes, that's me." "Well, not the disturbance exactly, that's something else, but the anomaly bit's probably accurate. You are Executor Celendis." The Protoss tilted its head slightly. "You speak our tongue." "Do I?" The doctor glanced back at Jim, then at the civilians. "Actually, no. You're hearing your own language. They're hearing theirs. And I'm hearing, well, something in between. Clever trick, isn't it?" Celendis took another step inside. Her armor hummed with barely contained energy. "This is no trick. This is a violation. You have touched our minds without permission." "Not me," the doctor said quickly. "The ship. She's got this brilliant translation system, telepathic field, completely harmless, just lets everyone understand each other without the tedious business of learning vocabulary. Very useful for avoiding wars, actually." "Telepathy," Celendis said, and her tone had gone colder, "is sacred. It is the bond of the Kala, the union of our people. You wield it like a tool. I wield it like a bridge." The doctor's voice didn't rise, but something in it hardened. "Communication, understanding, seems fairly sacred to me." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Jim kept his rifle steady, even though he knew logically, rationally knew that if the Protoss wanted him dead, he'd be dead before his finger found the trigger. Then Celendis lowered her head slightly. Not quite a nod, more like acknowledgement. "You are not of this world," she said. No, nor of this time. The doctor hesitated, just for a heartbeat. No. And yet you intervene. Someone has to. Celendis was quiet for another moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted. Still formal, still layered with that inhuman resonance, but less hostile. We detected the psionic disturbance 3 cycles ago. A fracture in the underlying fabric. It grows. I know. The doctor turned back to the console, fingers already moving. I felt it when I arrived. Something's pulling time out of joint, creating echoes. Reflections of events that haven't happened yet, bleeding into now. This is known to us, Celendis said. We have seen battles repeat, outcomes shift, causality fracture. Jim's stomach dropped. Wait, you're saying time is breaking? Not breaking, the doctor said absently, eyes on the console's readouts. Bending, being bent. There's a difference. And you believe you can repair this? The doctor looked up at Celendis. I believe someone is doing this on purpose, and I'd very much like to have a conversation with them about why. Celendis regarded him for a long moment. Her glowing eyes gave away nothing. Then she raised one hand, and light flickered across her fingertips. The Protoss do not ally easily with strangers. I'm not asking for an alliance. No. Celendis's voice carried something that might have been approval. You ask for nothing. You simply act. This is unexpected. She turned, moving back toward the door with that same unhurried grace. At the threshold, she paused. The void calls to this sector, Doctor. It has called before. Each time the cycle renews. The war continues. She looked back at him. If you truly seek to change this, you will find no shortage of resistance. Story of my life, the doctor said lightly. Celendis stepped through the door and vanished into the smoke and ash outside. Jim exhaled slowly, lowering his rifle. What the hell just happened? The doctor was already back at the console, muttering to himself. Made a friend. Maybe. Hard to tell with Protoss. Very formal people. Lovely architecture, though. She said the void is calling. What does that mean? The doctor's hand stilled on the controls. It means, he said quietly, that whatever's pulling on time isn't just dangerous. It's old. Older than your dominion, older than the Protoss, maybe older than this whole messy corner of space. He looked at Jim, and that terrible weight was back in his eyes. And it wants this war to never end. The Dominion outpost sat on the edge of Backwater Station like a tumor. All clean lines and reinforced steel guards at every checkpoint, scanners sweeping for anything that moved without authorization. Jim crouched behind a stack of supply crates, watching the patrol patterns. 2 guards rotating every 8 minutes. Predictable. The Dominion loved its routines. Beside him, the doctor was doing something with his sonic device. The high-pitched whine made Jim's teeth ache. Can you not? Jim muttered. Almost done. The doctor frowned at a readout Jim couldn't see. Their surveillance grid's running on a feedback loop. Should give us about 90 seconds of blind spots. Should, well, give or take. The doctor pocketed the sonic, looked at Jim. You don't have to come in. I can handle this alone. Sure, because you've got so much experience sneaking into military installations. The doctor's expression suggested he had more than Jim probably wanted to know about. They moved during the shift change. Quick and quiet, slipping through a maintenance access that the doctor had somehow known would be there. Inside, the corridors were sterile. White walls, harsh lighting, the kind of place designed to make people feel small. Jim hated it immediately. "We're looking for records," the doctor said, voice low. "Anything about psionic research. Void signatures. Temporal anomalies." "They're not going to label it that conveniently." "No, but they'll label it something. Military types always do. Can't resist a good filing system." They rounded a corner and nearly walked into a patrol. Jim's hand went to his sidearm. The doctor grabbed his wrist, squeezed once. "Wait." The two soldiers walked past them. Walked right past them, close enough that Jim could see the Dominion insignia on their shoulders, hear their conversation about the mess hall's terrible coffee. And didn't see them. Jim's breath caught in his throat. He stood perfectly still, watching the soldiers disappear around the next bend, waiting for the alarm that never came. "How?" he whispered. The doctor was already moving again, pulling Jim along. "Perception filter. Sort of. The TARDIS generates a field low-level psychic nudge, makes people's brains decide we're not worth noticing. That's impossible." "That's convenient." The doctor glanced back. "And temporary. Don't rely on it too much. Cameras still see us, and anyone looking directly will notice eventually." They found the research wing 3 levels down. More guards here, but the filter held. Jim felt like he was sleepwalking through a nightmare, invisible and exposed at the same time. The doctor found a terminal, pulled out the sonic, and went to work. Files scrolled past, reports, incident logs, and their psi emitter deployment records. The doctor's expression darkened as he read. "They're using them," he said quietly. "Luring Zerg into populated areas. Using entire colonies as bait." Jim's jaw tightened. He'd suspected. Hearing it confirmed was different. "Can you download those?" "Already doing it." The doctor's voice had gone flat. "Dangerous. They're calling it strategic asset management. Making weapons out of living beings and calling it strategy." Something moved at the edge of Jim's vision. He turned. A woman stood in the doorway. Young, maybe mid-20s, dressed in black, a psi amp visible at her temple. Her eyes were empty in that specific way that came from hearing orders inside your head for so long you forgot what your own thoughts sounded like. Ghost. Her gun was already up, pointed at the doctor's back. "Step away from the terminal," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. But her hand wasn't quite steady. The doctor turned slowly, hands visible. "Hello?" "Bit awkward, this." "You're not authorized to be here." "No," the doctor agreed. "I'm really not. But I think you already knew that." The ghost's eyes flicked between them. Jim kept his hand away from his weapon. Any sudden move, and this ended badly. "You saw us," the doctor said. Not a question. "The filter doesn't work on us. Psionic training." Her gun didn't waver. "Who are you?" "Someone who doesn't think people should be turned into weapons." The doctor's voice was gentle, almost kind. "You've got an implant. Neural inhibitor. Makes it easier to follow orders. Harder to think for yourself." Something flickered in her eyes. "I serve the Dominion." "Do you, or does the implant serve the Dominion and take you along for the ride?" "Shut up." "What's your name?" "Designate November 7. That's not a name. That's a filing system." The doctor took a step forward. Slowly. "What did they call you before?" The ghost's hand was definitely shaking now. "I said shut up." "Sarah, Michael, Alice. Something your parents gave you. Something that was yours before they put metal in your head and told you it was for the greater good." "They saved me," she said, but her voice cracked, just slightly. Did they? Or did they just find a use for you? The gun lowered, just an inch. I could kill you, she whispered. You could, the doctor said. But you won't, because you're standing here having a conversation instead of pulling the trigger. Which means some part of you, the part they haven't managed to scrub out yet, is still asking questions. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the ghost's communicator crackled. November 7 report status. Her hand went to the device. She looked at the doctor. Status clear, she said into the comm. False alarm. The line went dead. She lowered her gun completely. You need to leave. Now. I can only cover for you for 5 minutes. Come with us, the doctor said. I can't. You can. They'll hunt me. Let them. The doctor's voice was steady, certain. Better to be hunted for what you are than celebrated for what they made you. The ghost, November 7, or whoever she'd been before, stared at him. Then she shook her head. Go. Before I change my mind. The doctor nodded slowly. If you ever do change your mind, I know where to find the blue box. She stepped aside, gestured toward the exit. Now go. They went. Jim didn't speak until they were 3 blocks away. The TARDIS door sealed behind them. You think she'll be all right? The doctor didn't answer immediately. He stood at the console, hands flat against the brass, looking at nothing. I think, he said finally, she just made the hardest choice of her life. Whether she survives, it depends on what she does next. And we just left her there. The doctor's hands curled into fists. I can't save everyone, Jim. I can only give them the choice. What they do with it, that's up to them. The words sounded like something he'd said before, many times, and hated every single one. The data from the Dominion terminal painted a picture Jim wished he'd never seen. Coordinates, deployment schedules, casualty projections written in neat columns, like they were accounting for equipment losses instead of lives. And at the center of it all, the psi emitter's devices designed to broadcast a signal so potent, so irresistible to Zerg, that entire broods would abandon their hunting grounds and swarm toward the source. The Dominion had been using them as bait, planting them in colonies, rebel outposts, anywhere they wanted Zerg to attack. Marsara, Jim said, staring at the readout. His voice sounded distant. They hit Marsara with 1, 2 months ago. The doctor didn't respond. He stood at the TARDIS console perfectly still. He'd been that way for the last 10 minutes, ever since Jim had started reading the files aloud. 18,000 dead, Jim continued. Numbers helped. Numbers kept the horror at arm's length. Official reports said it was a Zerg migration pattern, natural aggression. Still nothing. They did it on purpose, drew the Zerg in, let them tear through the colony, then swooped in after to rescue survivors and look like heroes. Jim's hands were shaking. He set the datapad down before he broke it. My sister was on Marsara. The doctor's head turned, just slightly. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Are you? Jim heard the bitterness in his own voice and didn't care. Because you're standing there like it's just another day. Another atrocity. Another... I'm standing here, the doctor interrupted, because if I start moving, I won't stop until I've torn that facility down to its foundations. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Jim looked at the doctor, really looked, and saw what he'd missed before. The white knuckles gripping the console edge, the muscle jumping in his jaw. The way his breathing had gone shallow and controlled, like someone holding back a scream. "They turned a species into a weapon," the doctor said. Each word was precise, clipped. Not soldiers, not volunteers, an entire species. Millions of living beings with their own drives, their own ecosystem, their own right to exist. And these people, he gestured at the data pad, these people decided that was fine, acceptable, strategic. "It's war," Jim said. "Not defending it. Just stating fact." "No." The doctor's voice was ice. "War is when you fight an enemy. This is when you create a disaster and blame it on biology." He finally moved, crossing to the data pad, picked it up, read in silence for a moment. Then he threw it. The data pad hit the far wall and shattered. Civilians who'd been resting in the corner flinched. The doctor didn't seem to notice. "They knew," he said. "Every deployment, every swarm. They knew exactly how many would die. Margin of error, plus or minus 3%. His laugh was sharp, bitter. 3%. That's the value they put on lives. Statistical variance. Jim had seen angry before. He'd been angry himself plenty of times. But this was different. This was rage that had frozen over, gone cold and sharp and surgical. "Doctor, there's a colony." The doctor pulled up a star chart on the console. "Oasis, population 42,000, mostly farmers, some manufacturing. Dominion's got an emitter scheduled for deployment in..." He checked the timestamp. 6 hours. "Can we stop it?" "Oh, we're going to stop it." The doctor's fingers flew over the controls. "And then we're going to have a very pointed conversation with whoever authorized this program." The TARDIS lurched into motion. Jim grabbed a support railing. "Pointed how?" The doctor didn't answer. He was focused on the console, making adjustments with sharp economical movements. No wasted effort, no hesitation. When he finally looked up, his expression was calm, perfectly terribly calm. "I won't kill them," he said, "but I'm going to make sure they understand, really understand what they've done." The dematerialization sound faded. They'd arrived. Oasis Colony was small. Prefab structures, hydroponic gardens, the kind of frontier settlement that survived on grit and optimism. Jim could see families in the streets, kids playing near a fountain. Normal, peaceful, for now. "There." The doctor pointed at a Dominion transport on the colony's edge. "That's carrying the emitter. They'll plant it in the central market. Maximum casualties when the Zerg arrive." "How do we..." The doctor was already out the door. Jim followed rifle ready and found the doctor walking straight toward the transport. No cover, no stealth, just walking. 2 guards spotted him immediately, raised their weapons. "Stop right there." The doctor pulled out the sonic screwdriver. "No," he said. The transport's cargo bay doors slammed open. Inside a device the size of a refrigerator hummed with psionic energy. The doctor pointed the sonic at it. The emitter exploded. Not violently, just stopped. Every component fused into useless slag in the span of a heartbeat. The psionic field collapsed with an audible whine that made Jim's teeth ache. The guard stared. "Tell your superiors," the doctor said, voice carrying across the empty space between them, "that their little weapon is broken. Tell them someone's paying attention now. And tell them..." He stepped closer. The guards actually backed up. "That if I find another one of these, I won't just break the device." He turned and walked away. The guards didn't stop him. Back in the TARDIS, Jim waited until the doors sealed before speaking. "You scared them. Good. You scared me." The doctor's hand stilled on the console. He didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't—" He stopped. Started again. "I've seen too many people treat living beings like tools, like resources. And every single time they justify it. Greater good. Strategic necessity. The needs of the many." His voice was raw. "I'm tired of hearing it." Jim thought about Mars Sarah, about his sister, about the thousands who died because someone had decided their lives were acceptable losses. "So what do we do?" The doctor looked back at him. The rage was still there, banked, but not gone. "We find who's really behind this. The emitters are just symptoms. Something else is wrong here. The time fractures, the void signatures, the way this whole sector's been locked in the same cycle of violence for decades." He pulled up the star chart again. "Someone wants this war to continue. I want to know why. And when we find them..." The doctor's expression was grim. "Then I'll give them a choice," he said. "Stop, or I'll stop them." That doesn't sound like giving someone a choice. It isn't. The doctor's voice was quiet, final. But it's more than they gave anyone else. The TARDIS hummed around them. Outside Oasis Colony went about its day, unaware of how close they'd come to annihilation. Jim leaned against the railing. "You said you wouldn't kill them." "I won't. But you'll stop them." "Yes. Even if stopping them means..." "I'll find another way," the doctor said. "Sharp, certain. There's always another way. That's the whole point." He turned back to the console, fingers gentle on the controls now. "There has to be." Jim heard what he didn't say. The fear underneath. That maybe this time there wouldn't be. The Dominion research facility wasn't marked on any map. Jim had learned that installations like this never were. Too valuable, too sensitive, too easy to justify if nobody knew they existed. The doctor had found it anyway. "They're analyzing the psi emitter wreckage from Oasis," he said, studying the sonics readout, trying to figure out what happened. "And they've got something else in there. Something that's resonating with void energy." "Resonating how?" "Like a tuning fork. Someone's using Dominion research as a receiver." The doctor pocketed the sonic, looked at the facility's outline against the night sky. "We need to see what they're listening to." Getting in was easier than it should have been. The doctor did something with the security grid that made half the cameras loop their own footage. The guards at the south entrance developed a sudden fascination with a distant explosion that probably wasn't real. Jim didn't ask. He'd stopped asking how the doctor did half the things he did. Inside the facility was all locked doors and restricted access. The doctor bypassed 3 checkpoints with the sonic before they hit one that didn't respond. "Psylock," he muttered. "Keyed to specific neural patterns. Can't fake that." "So we're stuck?" "No, we're improvising." The doctor pressed his hand flat against the TARDIS key in his pocket. Jim had seen him do it before some kind of remote signal. And somewhere 3 floors up, the TARDIS's engines groaned into life. The building shook. Alarms blared. Emergency lighting kicked in. And in the confusion, the psi lock disengaged as power rerouted to compensate for what the security system probably thought was a seismic event. The door opened. "After you," the doctor said pleasantly. They descended into the lower levels, past laboratories where scientists in clean suits worked on things Jim didn't want to identify, past holding cells that were definitely too small for the creatures inside them, past rooms that hummed with the same wrong frequency he'd felt in the void signatures. The doctor's expression grew darker with every floor. At the bottom they found it. A chamber, circular. Walls lined with crystalline structures that pulsed with sickly purple light. In the center, suspended in some kind of stasis field, was a fragment of something that hurt to look at. Not physically, mentally, like it existed in too many angles at once. Void crystal, the doctor breathed. They're harvesting it. For what? To amplify psionic energy, make their emitters stronger, more precise. He circled the chamber, sonic scanning constantly. But they don't understand what they're doing. Void energy doesn't just amplify. It corrupts, changes things. And if they've been using this in their research... Footsteps echoed from above. Guards, a lot of them. "We need to leave," Jim said. "Not yet." The doctor was at the control panel now, fingers flying. "I need to disable this. If they keep pulling void energy into real space, they'll tear a hole that won't close. Doctor, 30 seconds. The footsteps got louder. Closer. Jim positioned himself at the door, rifle ready. He could hear radio chatter now, security teams coordinating, sealing exits. They'd been made. 20 seconds. The guards rounded the corner. Jim fired a warning shot that sent them diving for cover. It bought time. Not much. 10 seconds. Plasma rounds chewed through the door frame. Jim ducked back, returned fire, trying not to think about how this was going to end if the doctor didn't finish soon. 5 seconds. Done. The doctor slammed something on the console. The void crystal's light died. The stasis field collapsed. And the fragment, whatever it was, simply stopped existing. Not destroyed. Just gone. Returned to wherever it had come from. "Run," the doctor said. They ran. The facility's layout shifted as they moved. Corridors that had led one direction now branched differently. Doors appeared where walls had been. Jim's sense of direction, usually reliable, gave up entirely. "What's happening?" "TARDIS is helping," the doctor said between breaths. "She's adjusting local space, making the building harder to navigate for anyone who's not us. Buildings don't work like that. This one does now." They burst into a storage bay. Dead end. Guards already moving to block the exit they'd just come through. And there in the corner, where it absolutely hadn't been a moment ago, sat the TARDIS. The doctor grabbed Jim's arm and pulled him inside. The door slammed shut. Plasma rounds hammered against the exterior, leaving scorch marks that faded almost as soon as they appeared. Safe. Jim leaned against the railing, catching his breath. Did the TARDIS just move itself? Probably. The doctor was at the console, checking readouts. She doesn't like it when people shoot at us. Gets protective. It's a ship. She's alive. The doctor's hand rested on the console, gentle, almost affectionate. I told you that. You didn't believe me. Jim watched as the central column pulsed with light. Not the mechanical flicker of machinery, something warmer, more aware. It moved the walls, he said slowly. Changed the building's layout to help us escape. Yes, that's not technology. That's conscious intervention. The doctor looked up. The TARDIS has her own opinions about danger. And apparently she's decided you're worth keeping alive. The ship hummed. Jim could have sworn it sounded smug. Tell her thank you, he said, feeling ridiculous. The humming shifted. Warmer. The doctor smiled. Actually smiled for the first time since Mars Sara. She heard you. Outside, the Dominion facility was going into full lockdown, searching for intruders who were already gone. looking for a blue box that had been in 3 different rooms simultaneously and was now nowhere at all. Jim sat on the stairs leading up to the console platform. His hands were still shaking, adrenaline probably, or the slow realization of what he'd just seen. "They're using void energy," he said. "Making it worse." "Yes." "And someone's behind it." "Coordinating." "Yes." "We're going to find them." The doctor's expression was grim. "We're going to try." The TARDIS materialized somewhere safer. Somewhere the Dominion wouldn't find them immediately. But Jim knew they both knew that safe was temporary, and the real fight hadn't even started yet. The TARDIS had taken them somewhere quiet. A moon orbiting a gas giant, no atmosphere, no life, no Dominion presence for 3 systems in any direction, safe enough to breathe. Jim found the doctor in one of the lower corridors, not the main control room, somewhere deeper in the ship's geometry where the walls curved in ways that made Jim's head hurt, if he thought about it too long. The doctor was talking. "I know," he said softly. "I know it hurts, but we had to shut it down. They were going to use it to hurt people." Jim stopped, listened. There was no one else in the corridor. "You felt it, didn't you?" the doctor continued. "The void energy, like poison in your systems. I'm sorry, I should have warned you before we got close." A pause. "No, I'm not cross with you. You did brilliantly. Moving the corridors like that, very clever." Another pause, longer this time. Then the doctor laughed, quiet and genuine. "Yes, all right. I suppose Jim did help a bit. Don't let it go to your head." The walls hummed. Jim cleared his throat. The doctor turned, not looking embarrassed at all. "Oh, hello. Were you just talking to the ship?" "Yes." "And she talks back?" "In her own way." The doctor patted the wall gently. "The TARDIS doesn't use words exactly. More like impressions, feelings. Sometimes images if she's feeling particularly articulate." Jim stared at the corridor, the warm lighting, the gentle pulse he'd always attributed to engines. "How long have you known that she's alive?" The doctor's expression softened. "Since the beginning, since she chose me." "Chose you?" "TARDISes aren't assigned, not really. They're grown, bioengineered, temporally aware, semi-sentient." He ran his hand along the wall like stroking a favored pet. "And when a Time Lord is ready to travel, they go to where the TARDISes are kept and, well, the ship chooses them. That doesn't make sense. Most of the best things don't." The doctor looked up at the ceiling. "She's been with me longer than anyone, seen more of me than I'd like. And she stays anyway." The TARDIS hummed again. Jim could have sworn it sounded affectionate. "Is she—" Jim struggled for the right word. "Hurt from the void energy. A bit. Like touching something that burns." The doctor's hand stilled on the wall. "She'll heal. She always does. Tougher than she looks." A sound echoed from deeper in the ship. Footsteps, running. Jim's rifle came up on instinct. The doctor frowned, already moving toward the noise. They found her in the medical bay. November 7. The ghost from the backwater facility, soaked in blood that probably wasn't all hers, breathing hard, psi-amp at her temple flickering erratically. She had a gun pointed at them. Again. "I need sanctuary," she said, voice raw, desperate. The doctor raised his hand slowly. "You're hurt." "I killed my commanding officer." The words came out flat, factual. "He ordered me to eliminate a resistance cell, families, children." Her hand was shaking. I said no. He activated the kill switch in my implant. Jim saw the burn marks on her neck. Neural feedback. The kind that was supposed to incapacitate, not kill. She'd survived it. So I shot him, November 7 continued. And now they're hunting me. All of them. The whole Dominion. How did you find us? Jim asked. The blue box. It leaves a signature. Psionic residue. She lowered the gun slightly. You said if I changed my mind. I did, the doctor said. He crossed to her movements, calm and deliberate. And I meant it. Put the gun down. Let me see the implant. She hesitated, then slowly lowered the weapon. The doctor examined her neck. The psi amp was damaged, circuit burns spiderwebbing out from the connection points. He pulled out the sonic, scanned carefully. They tried to fry your brain remotely, he said quietly. You blocked it. Psionic shielding. They taught us. Her voice cracked. Never thought I'd use it against them. What's your name? The doctor asked. Your real name. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't remember. It's been so long. Then pick a new one. Just like that. Just like that. The doctor stepped back, pocketing the sonic. The implant's damaged, but functional. I can remove it, but it'll hurt. And without it, your psionic abilities will be different, less controlled. I don't want it anymore. Her voice was steady now, certain. I don't want anything they put in me. The doctor nodded. Jim, I'll need the medical kit. Drawer 3. Jim found it, brought it over, watched as the doctor worked with steady hands, removing the device piece by careful piece. November 7 didn't scream, barely flinched. Whatever training the Dominion had given her included pain tolerance. When it was done, the doctor held up the implant. Small, innocuous, terrifying in its simplicity. You're free, he said. She touched her temple. The skin was raw where the amp had been, but intact. I don't feel free. I feel empty. That'll pass. Give it time. How much time do I have? She looked at Jim. They'll come for me. They'll come for all of us. Let them, the doctor said. They can try. The TARDIS hummed, loud enough that even November 7 noticed it. What was that? The doctor smiled. The ship. She's deciding whether she likes you. Can she do that? She can do quite a lot, actually. He paused, tilted his head like listening to something, then laughed. She says you're angry and scared, and trying very hard to be brave. She approves. November 7 stared at the walls. The ship has opinions. Very strong ones. About people. Especially about people who stand up to tyrants. The doctor's expression grew serious. You made a choice. A hard one. The TARDIS respects that. The humming shifted. Warmer. Welcoming. November 7 sat down on the medical bay floor. The adrenaline was wearing off now, leaving her hollowed out. I don't know what to do next. You rest, the doctor said. And then you decide who you want to be now that no one's telling you. Jim watched her process that. Watched the moment she realized it was true. No orders, no mission parameters, just her. It terrified her and freed her. There's a resistance, Jim said quietly. People fighting the Dominion. If you want, I don't know what I want. November 7 looked up at him. I've never been allowed to want anything. Then take your time, the doctor said. Figure it out. You're safe here. She nodded. Didn't quite believe it yet, but wanted to. The doctor left her there, Jim following. Outside the medical bay, they stood in the corridor that had somehow rearranged itself again. She'll be all right, Jim asked. Eventually. The doctor looked tired. Healing takes time, especially when the wounds aren't physical. The TARDIS really approves of her. The doctor smiled, sad and warm at once. The TARDIS knows what it's like to be treated as a tool, to have someone finally see you as more than what you were built for. He touched the wall again, gentle. She's very good at recognizing kindred spirits. The ship hummed its agreement. And somewhere in the medical bay, a woman who'd been designate November 7 her entire life started the long process of becoming someone else. Someone whole. The distress call came from a battlecruiser that hadn't been built yet. Jim stared at the signal on the TARDIS console. Dominion frequency, standard encryption. But the timestamp was wrong. 6 months in the future. How is that possible? He asked. The doctor's face was grim. It isn't. Which means we've found the fracture. They materialized in orbit above a contested moon. What should have been empty space was a graveyard. Wrecks hung in the void, Terran battlecruisers, Protoss carriers, Zerg bioships, all frozen in various stages of destruction. And they were moving, not drifting. Moving, firing weapons. Explosions bloomed in silence, tearing through hulls that were already torn. Ships that had died hours ago were dying again. And again. Time loop, the doctor breathed. The battle keeps repeating. They're trapped. A Protoss carrier materialized beside them. Not arriving. Just suddenly there like it had skipped the intermediate space. Executor Celendis' voice came through on all frequencies. Doctor, you see it? I see it. The doctor's hands moved across the console. How long has this been happening? 3 days. We lose the same warriors each cycle. They die. The loop resets. They die again. Her voice was steady, but Jim heard the strain underneath. We cannot break free. Causality has collapsed here. Can we pull them out? Jim asked. Not without anchoring them to linear time. The doctor pulled up readouts, muttering calculations. And to do that, I'd need to. The TARDIS shuddered. Not from impact, from proximity. Something massive had just entered the battlefield, and it wasn't a ship. Jim looked out through the view screen. The TARDIS had one. When the doctor needed it, another impossible feature, and saw it. A tear in the space. Violet light bleeding through the edges. And around it, the time echoes intensified. Ships appeared and disappeared in rapid succession, entire battles condensing into moments and then stretching out for hours. The void rift, Celendis said. It grows. Not naturally. The doctor's voice was sharp, certain. Someone's feeding it. Void energy and psionic amplification. They're turning this battlefield into a temporal wound. To what purpose? To make sure the war never ends. The doctor looked up from the console. If time keeps looping here, if battles repeat indefinitely, then everyone Terran, Protoss, Zerg stays locked in this cycle. No peace, no progress, just eternal conflict. Jim felt cold. Who would want that? Someone who benefits from chaos. The doctor's jaw tightened. Or someone who thinks conflict is the natural state of things. Evolution through endless war. A transmission crackled through. Terran panicked. Any ships in range? This is the Hyperion requesting immediate. Jim's blood went cold. That's my ship. Future or present? The doctor asked. I don't know. Another echo rippled through the battlefield. The Hyperion appeared in 3 different positions simultaneously past, present, future, all overlapping. One was burning, one was intact, one hadn't been damaged yet. Dr. Woods, Selendis said, if we do not act, this will spread. The fracture will consume the system. I know. The doctor's hand stilled on the controls. I need to anchor the timeline, create a fixed point. But to do that, you will need to enter the rift, Selendis finished. Yes. That is suicide. Probably. The doctor looked at Jim. I need you to stay here. Keep the TARDIS stable. She'll know what to do. Like hell. Jim grabbed his rifle. You go in there alone, you don't come back. Jim. I didn't ask. Jim's voice was flat, final. You want to save my ship, my crew, you take the backup. The doctor studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right. But when I say run, you run. No heroics. Same to you. They materialized on the Hyperion's bridge, or what was left of it. The ship was phasing in and out of coherent sections of the hull, flickering between damaged and pristine. Crew members moved in stuttering loops, repeating the same actions over and over. Jim saw Matt Horner at the tactical station, saw him get hit by debris, saw him die, saw him reset and stand up again alive, only to die 60 seconds later in the exact same way. No, Jim whispered. The doctor grabbed his arm. They're not conscious of it. The loop's too tight. They don't know they're dying. That doesn't make it better. I know. The doctor pulled out the sonic, scanning the bridge. The rift's core is 3 decks down. Engineering. That's where someone anchored the temporal distortion. They fought their way through corridors that kept changing. Past crew members trapped in death loops. Past sections of ship that didn't exist yet or had already been destroyed. The TARDIS hummed in Jim's mind. He could feel it now, a presence at the edge of his thoughts, guiding them through the chaos. Engineering was a nightmare. The void rift pulsed in the center of the room, a wound in reality held open by crystalline structures identical to the ones they'd seen in the Dominion facility. And standing beside it was a figure Jim didn't recognize, tall, gaunt, wearing robes that seemed to absorb light. When it turned to face them, its expression was calm, peaceful, like it had been waiting. Doctor, it said. The voice layered harmonic wrong. You are too late. The cycle is already locked. Who are you? The doctor demanded. A shepherd, a guide. The figure gestured at the rift. This sector has fought the same war for generations. Terran against Protoss, against Zerg. All of them convinced the others must be destroyed. It smiled. I simply ensured they would have eternity to try. You're killing them, Jim said. I am perfecting them. Through endless conflict, they will evolve, become stronger, become worthy. Worthy of what? The doctor's voice was ice. The void's attention. The figure spread its arms. When they have proven themselves through sufficient struggle, the void will remake them, elevate them, give them purpose beyond this crude existence. The doctor took a step forward. You're insane. I am patient. The figure looked at the rift with something like affection. And you cannot stop this. The temporal lock is already in place. Remove it, and causality collapses completely. Everyone in this system dies, permanently. Then I won't remove it. the doctor said quietly. I'll contain it. He pressed something on the sonic. The TARDIS materialized around them, not the whole ship, just a fragment of it, a shield extending from the doctor's hand. The void rift flickered, stuttered, and began to contract. No, the figure hissed. You cannot. I can. The doctor's voice was steady, absolute. The TARDIS exists outside your linear time. She's older than your void, older than your cycle, and she's very good at saying no to things that shouldn't exist. The shield expanded, pushed against the rift. The crystalline structures shattered one by one. The figure lunged. The doctor didn't move. The TARDIS did. Space itself seemed to shift, and the figure hit a wall that hadn't been there a moment before. It fell stunned. Jim, the doctor said through gritted teeth. The crystals. Destroy them. Jim fired. The remaining structures exploded under concentrated rifle fire. The rift collapsed inward, shrinking, pulling all its stolen time back into itself. The temporal loops stopped. On the bridge, Matt Horner stood up from tactical. Once, stayed standing, looked around confused but alive. The doctor's shield flickered, died. He collapsed. Jim caught him. Doctor, I'm fine. The doctor's voice was weak. Just a bit more than I thought. TARDIS took most of it, but... The ship hummed, worried. Celindis's voice crackled through comms. The fracture is sealed. Casualties, minimal. How did you... Later, the doctor managed. He looked at the figure still dazed against the wall. You. What's your name? The figure laughed. Bitter. Broken. Names are irrelevant. The void will send others. The cycle will continue. Maybe, the doctor said. But not today. He stood leaning heavily on Jim. Together they walked out of engineering, leaving the figure to Protoss custody. The battle was over. The loop was broken. The dead stayed dead this time. But Jim knew, watching the doctor's pale face, that the victory had cost more than either of them wanted to admit. The War Council met on neutral ground. A Protoss outpost, ancient and austere, where representatives from 3 species gathered under a truce that felt more like a held breath. Jim had never seen anything like it. Terran officers in their battered armor. Protoss Templars standing like statues carved from judgment. And in the corner, kept at a careful distance, a single Zerg cerebrate, sedated, bound, but conscious enough to serve as a voice for the swarm. The doctor stood at the center of the room, exhausted. The temporal shield from the Hyperion had drained him more than he'd admitted. But his voice was steady when he spoke. The void rift is sealed, he said, but the fractures remain. Time echoes are still appearing across the sector. Someone seeded this entire region with void crystals, and they're still active. Then we destroy them, said a Terran general. Marcus, hard eyes, harder voice. Scorched earth. Burn every site contaminated with void energy. That would require destroying 17 colonies, Celindis said. Her tone was neutral. Her disapproval was not. 17 colonies versus the entire sector, Marcus shot back. Easy math. The doctor said nothing. Jim watched him, watched the way his hands had gone still at his sides, the way his breathing had slowed, the way he was looking at Marcus like he was cataloging exactly what kind of person made those calculations. There are alternatives, Celindis continued. Psionic purification. The Kala can cleanse void corruption without annihilation. How long would that take? Marcus demanded. Years, perhaps decades. We don't have years. The Zerg are still out there. The swarm doesn't wait for clean solutions. The Cerebrate pulsed. Its voice came through a translator, wet and layered. The swarm seeks only evolution. If void energy corrupts the swarm, we'll adapt. Consume. Become stronger. See? Marcus turned to the doctor. Even the Zerg know survival requires hard choices. You've seen the data. You know what needs to be done. The doctor still said nothing. Jim's stomach dropped. He'd seen the doctor angry, seen him cold. But this silence was something else entirely. Doctor, Celendis said quietly, your counsel would be valued. The doctor looked up. His expression was perfectly blank. You want my counsel, he said. Each word precise, measured. My counsel is that if you burn 17 colonies, you become exactly what you're fighting. That's not practical, Marcus said. No, it's moral. Different thing. Morality is a luxury we can't afford. The doctor took a step forward. The room seemed to contract around him. Morality is the only thing separating you from the void. The moment you decide some lives don't matter, you've already lost. 17 colonies, Marcus repeated. Versus billions. The math. The math. The doctor interrupted, and his voice had gone quiet in that terrible way that made Jim's skin crawl. Is a lie you tell yourself so you can sleep at night. I've heard it before. Different wars, different species. Same excuse, and it's always wrong. Marcus's jaw tightened. Then what do you suggest? I suggest you stop looking for the easy answer. The doctor's hands curled into fists. I suggest you actually do the work. Evacuate the colonies. Quarantine the contaminated zones. Use Protoss purification where you can. Develop countermeasures where you can't. It'll take time. It'll be hard. But you'll still be people when you're done. And if we don't have time, Marcus challenged. If the void spreads faster than we can contain it? The doctor said nothing. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. Nobody moved. Jim had never heard a room so quiet. Celendis finally spoke. Doctor, if containment fails, if the corruption spreads beyond control, what then? The doctor looked at her, then at Marcus, then at the Cerebrate in the corner pulsing with patient malice. Then I'll find another way, he said. There may not be another way. There's always another way. And if there isn't, Marcus pressed, if it comes down to 17 colonies or the entire sector, what do you choose? The doctor's expression was stone. I don't. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. The doctor turned toward the door. Because the moment I start choosing who deserves to die for the greater good, I stop being someone worth listening to. He walked out. Jim followed. Found him in the corridor outside, leaning against the wall, eyes closed. You okay? No. The doctor's voice was raw. I'm really not. They want an easy answer. I know. The doctor opened his eyes. And I can't give them one. Because easy answers in situations like this are just justifications for atrocities. So what do we do? The doctor pushed off the wall. We find the source. The void crystals didn't plant themselves. Someone coordinated this. Someone with resources. Someone who benefits from keeping this sector in chaos. The figure from the Imperium. One of many, I suspect. The doctor started walking, but they all answer to something. Someone. And when we find them, he stopped. Mid-sentence, mid-step. Doctor. The doctor's hand went to his temple. Oh, no. What? The TARDIS. She's... The ground shook. Not an earthquake. Something else. A wrongness in the air, a pressure that made Jim's ears pop. They ran back to where they'd left the TARDIS. The blue box was flickering, in and out of phase, like it was being pulled somewhere against its will. November 7 was there, braced against the door. It started 2 minutes ago. I tried to go inside, but the door won't. The doctor was already at the lock, sonic out. She's caught in a trap. Someone's using a void crystal to create a localized temporal field, and the TARDIS vanished. Just gone. One moment there, the next empty space. No, the doctor breathed. No, no, no. His sonic beeped. He looked at the readout, and his face went white. What? Jim demanded. Where is she? Inside the rift. The doctor's voice was hollow. They've pulled her into the void rift. Used her as bait to... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Jim understood. They wanted you. They wanted the TARDIS. The doctor was already moving, pulling up coordinates on a handheld device Jim hadn't seen before. She's temporal technology. If they can crack her open, study her, they can create permanent fractures, lock the entire sector in a time loop that never ends. Can we get her back? The doctor looked at him, and for the first time since Mars Sarah, Jim saw genuine fear in those ancient eyes. I don't know, the doctor admitted. The void rift is... It's outside normal space. The rules there are different, hostile. And if they've already started trying to access her core systems... The TARDIS. Jim had spent days inside her, felt her warmth, heard her hum, watched the doctor speak to her like she was alive, because she was alive. We go in after her, Jim said. It's a trap. Obviously. Jim checked his rifle. So we spring it carefully. November 7 stepped forward. I can help. Psionic shielding. If the void tries to corrupt you, I can push back. For a while. The doctor looked between them. Two humans who'd thrown their lot in with a stranger and his impossible ship, who were volunteering to walk into a wound in reality because it was the right thing to do. All right, he said quietly. But we do this smart. We go in, we get her out, we don't engage unless we have to. Agreed, Jim said. The doctor pulled out his sonic, made adjustments. The rift's core is 3 systems away. We'll need a ship. The Hyperion, Jim said immediately. Matt owes us. He'll take us. They moved. Fast, purposeful. No more time for councils or debates or easy answers. The TARDIS was gone, and they were going into the void to get her back, even if it killed them. The Hyperion cut through space toward coordinates that shouldn't exist. Matt Horner stood at the helm, jaw set, refusing to acknowledge how insane this mission was. Approaching the rift, he reported. Sensors are going haywire. I'm reading spatial distortions, temporal anomalies, and something that registers as both matter and antimatter simultaneously. That's the void, the doctor said from the tactical station. He looked worse than Jim had ever seen him. Dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking slightly when he thought no one was watching. Reality breaks down there. Physics becomes optional. Can we survive it? For a while. The doctor pulled up a schematic on the display. The TARDIS is at the center. I can feel her. She's still alive, but they're trying to force open her core. If they succeed, they won't, Jim said, firmly. We'll get there first. November 7 stood nearby, Psi-Amp burns still visible on her temple. I'm reading massive psionic activity. Multiple sources. They're using void energy to amplify some kind of ritual. Not a ritual, the doctor corrected. A extraction. They're trying to pull her temporal technology out of her living matrix. It'll kill her. The Hyperion shuddered as they entered the rift's outer boundary. The view screen flickered, showing space that was simultaneously empty and full dark and blazing with violet light. I really hate this place, Matt muttered. Drop us as close as you can, the doctor said. Then pull back. If we're not out in 30 minutes... We'll wait, Matt interrupted. However long it takes. The doctor looked at him, nodded once. Grateful, they took a shuttle the last kilometer. The rift's interior was worse than Jim had imagined. Space twisted in on itself, gravity pulling in 3 directions at once. He could see structures floating in the void, crystalline towers, biomechanical platforms, things that hurt to look at directly. And at the center, surrounded by void crystals arranged in a perfect circle, was the TARDIS. She was screaming. Jim couldn't hear it with his ears. But November 7 gasped, hand going to her temple. The psionic resonance, she's in pain. I know. The doctor's voice was tight. Hold on, just hold on. Figures moved around the TARDIS, tall, wrong, wearing the same robes as the cultist from the Hyperion. There were dozens of them chanting in a language that made Jim's head ache. The doctor didn't wait. He jumped from the shuttle before it fully stopped hitting the platform and running. Jim and November 7 followed, weapons ready. The cultists turned as one. Doctor, said the one at the center. Different from the others. Taller. When it moved, reality seemed to bend around it. You came. Let her go, the doctor said. No preamble, no negotiation. The TARDIS is a key, the last remnant of Time Lord technology in this universe. The cultist gestured at the blue box. With it, we can remake time itself. Lock every moment in perfect eternal conflict. Evolution through endless war. That's not evolution, the doctor said. That's hell. That is purpose. The cultist spread its arms. You of all beings should understand. You have seen the universe's tendency toward chaos. We simply provide structure. The doctor pulled out his sonic. Last chance. Release her. No. The sonic shrieked. Every void crystal in the circle shattered simultaneously. The chanting stopped. The cultists recoiled. The TARDIS's light flickered, brightened. Now, the doctor shouted. Jim fired. November 7 unleashed a psionic blast that sent 3 cultists sprawling. They fought their way to the TARDIS, the doctor's sonic clearing a path through crystalline barriers and spatial distortions. The lead cultist raised its hand. The void itself seemed to respond, darkness coalescing into solid form. You cannot stop this. The TARDIS is already ours. Her defenses are failing. Her defenses, the doctor said, reaching the blue box and pressing his hand against the door, are just getting started. The TARDIS's engines roared to life, not the gentle wheeze groan of normal materialization. This was something else, a scream of defiance. The door slammed open and light poured out, not the warm glow Jim remembered, but something brighter, harsher, protective. The cultists tried to advance. The light pushed them back, burning through their robes like acid. Inside, the doctor yelled. They ran, through the door, into the console room. It was a mess. Sparking wires, fractured panels, the central column stuttering, trying to maintain rhythm. But she was alive. Hurt, but alive. The doctor was already at the controls, fingers flying. Come on, old girl. I know it hurts. I know they tried to break you. But I need you to fly, just once more. The TARDIS groaned. The cultists were at the door now, trying to force their way in. Doctor, Jim warned. Almost there. The doctor slammed a lever. The TARDIS lurched. Not into the time vortex, just sideways, out of the circle, away from the crystal's influence. The cultists' leader stepped forward. You delay the inevitable. The void has already chosen this sector. You cannot. The doctor looked up, and his expression was colder than the void of space. Get out of my ship. The TARDIS responded. Every door in the ship opened simultaneously. Corridors rearranged, creating a straight path from the console room to the exterior. And then the ship pushed. Not with machinery, with will. The cultists stumbled backward, feet sliding on floors that suddenly sloped away from them until they tumbled out into the void. The door slammed shut. Silence. The doctor collapsed against the console. Are you all right? Tell me you're all right. The TARDIS hummed, weak, pained, but alive. November 7 leaned against a support column, breathing hard. What just happened? She defended herself, Jim said quietly. The ship defended herself. The doctor nodded, face pressed against the brass console like he was embracing something precious. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so sorry I let them take you. I'm so... The TARDIS's hum shifted. Gentle. Forgiving. Outside, the Hyperion was moving into position. Matt's voice crackled through comms. Doctor, we've got you on sensors. Multiple hostiles converging on your position. We need to leave. Now. Agreed. The doctor straightened, wiping his eyes quickly. But I can't take us into the vortex. She's too damaged. We'll need a tow. Already on it, Matt replied, extending tractor beam. The Hyperion grabbed the TARDIS, pulling her clear of the rift. The cultists tried to follow, but Protoss fighters appeared from nowhere, Celendis's fleet providing cover fire. They made it out. Barely. The doctor spent the journey back in the console room, making repairs with tools that appeared from dimensional pockets Jim hadn't known existed. November 7 helped where she could, her psionic sensitivity allowing her to sense which systems needed attention. Jim just watched. Watched the doctor work with desperate, gentle precision. Watched him apologize to the ship with every adjustment. Watched him refuse to stop until the central column's rhythm steadied. She'll be okay, Jim finally asked. The doctor didn't look up. Eventually. The damage is extensive, but she survived worse. We both have. His hand stilled on a damaged panel. She saved me, you know, when the time war ended, when I was the last one left. The doctor's voice was quiet, distant. She could have chosen anyone to travel with, anyone in the universe. And she chose me. The one who destroyed our home. Maybe, Jim said carefully, she knew you needed saving too. The doctor looked up. His expression was raw, vulnerable in a way Jim had never seen. Maybe, he whispered. The TARDIS hummed. Warm, certain. And in that moment, Jim understood what he'd been watching this whole time. Not a man and his ship. A family. Broken, battered, but whole. The void rift was collapsing. Not closing, collapsing. The difference, the doctor explained, was catastrophic. A closing rift seals cleanly, he said, pointing at the display. This one's imploding, taking everything within 3 light years with it. Planets, stars, ships, all of it compressed into a singularity that'll destabilize the entire sector. How long? Selendis asked. Her fleet surrounded the rift at a careful distance, holding position. 6 hours, maybe less. Jim looked at the readings, at the spatial distortions already visible at the rift's edges. Can we stop it? The doctor was quiet for a long moment. Yes. Something in his voice made Jim's stomach drop. How? Someone has to anchor it. Create a stable point that the collapse can't cross. A temporal lock strong enough to contain the implosion until it burns itself out. The TARDIS, November 7 said quietly. The doctor nodded. She exists outside linear time. If I position her at the rift's exact center and engage her temporal stabilizers, she can hold the line, contain the collapse. And you, Jim demanded. I'll be fine. The TARDIS will protect me. Don't lie to me. Jim stepped forward. You said she's damaged. Barely flying. You want to use her as a reality anchor in her condition? The doctor didn't answer. Selendis' hologram flickered. Doctor, if the TARDIS serves as anchor, what happens to her afterward? She survives. The temporal lock will hold for approximately 72 hours, long enough for the rift to stabilize. Then I can disengage and we leave. Can she survive 3 days at the center of a collapsing void rift? Selendis pressed. The doctor's hands curled into fists. She has to. The TARDIS hummed. Quiet, sad. Jim heard it this time. Really heard it. The ship wasn't confident, wasn't certain. She was afraid. There's another way, Jim said. There has to be. There isn't. The doctor turned away from the console. I've run every calculation, every scenario. This is the only option that doesn't result in millions dead. Then let me go with you. No. Doctor, no. The doctor's voice cracked. You've already risked enough. All of you. I'm not... He stopped, breathed, started again. This is my responsibility. The rift exists because I didn't stop the cultists sooner. Because I was too slow to see the pattern. This is on me. That's guilt talking, November 7 said. Not logic. The doctor looked at her. Maybe, but it's still true. Matt Horner's voice crackled through comms. Doctor, we're reading increased activity at the rift's edge. Whatever you're going to do it fast. The doctor moved to the console. His hands were steady now, resolved. Jim, I need you to take the others and get clear. Minimum safe distance is 5 light years. I'm not leaving you here. You are. The doctor looked up, and his expression was gentle, kind, final. Because if this goes wrong, someone needs to warn the sector. Someone needs to make sure people know what happened here. That's you. Jim wanted to argue, wanted to grab the doctor and shake him until he admitted there was another way. But he'd seen that look before, on soldiers who'd already made peace with what came next. When you get back, Jim said, voice rough, I'm buying you a drink, somewhere that doesn't serve recycled protein. The doctor smiled, sad and warm. I'll hold you to that. November 7 stepped forward. Doctor, thank you for giving me a choice. Thank you for taking it. He looked at her, What will you do after? Find the others. The ghosts still trapped in Dominion service. She touched her temple where the implant had been. Show them there's another way. The doctor nodded. Proud. They left. Jim was the last one out. He stood at the TARDIS door looking back at the impossible ship and the impossible man who'd crashed into their war and refused to let it be inevitable. Don't die, Jim said. Wasn't planning on it, the doctor replied. The door closed. The Hyperion pulled back Protoss fleet, forming a perimeter. On the view screen, Jim watched the TARDIS maneuver toward the rift's center. Small, fragile, moving into a wound in reality that was trying to eat the universe. Approaching optimal position, the doctor's voice came through comms. Calm, professional. Engaging temporal stabilizers in 3, 2, 1. The TARDIS flared. Brilliant blue-white light expanding outward in a perfect sphere. The rift's collapse slowed, stuttered, stopped, held. It's working, Matt breathed. The light intensified. Jim could see the TARDIS at the center now barely visible through the temporal field. The central column was pulsing rapidly, fighting to maintain coherence. Dr. Jim called. Status show rooms. Static. Then, holding. She's holding. Temporal lock is stable, but more static. Power consumption higher than projected. Doctor. Fine. We're fine. Just need to... The signal cut out. Jim stared at the view screen, at the blue light holding back annihilation. Doctor. Doctor, respond. Nothing. Celendis, Jim said. Can you get a reading on the TARDIS's interior? Negative. The temporal field is blocking all scans. They waited. Minutes stretched into hours. The TARDIS held position light, unwavering, containing a collapsing universe, with nothing but will and temporal technology that should have burned out hours ago. 72 hours, the doctor had said. 3 days. They waited all 3. On the 3rd day, at exactly the 72nd hour, the light began to fade. The rift's collapse had burned itself out, leaving behind stable space, scarred but intact. The TARDIS emerged, limping, barely materializing. She appeared on the Hyperion's hangar deck and simply stopped engines silent. Jim ran. November 7 was right behind him. They reached the blue box together. The door was open. Inside the console room was dark. The central column was still. Smoke drifted from damaged panels, and slumped against the console unconscious, but breathing was the doctor. Jim hauled him up. Medical team, now! The doctor's eyes flickered open, unfocused. Jim, yeah, it's me. You did it. The rift's stable. She... The doctor's hand moved weakly toward the console. Is she? The TARDIS hummed, barely audible, exhausted beyond measure, but alive. She's okay, Jim said. You both are. The doctor's eyes closed. Good. That's good. He passed out. Medical took him to the Hyperion's medbay. 3 days in a temporal lock had taken its toll. Radiation burns, temporal displacement sickness, exhaustion, so deep it would take weeks to recover. But he would recover. Jim stood in the TARDIS afterward. The ship was silent, wounded. But when he put his hand on the console, he felt warmth, recognition. Thank you, he said quietly, for saving him. For saving all of us. The TARDIS hummed, gentle, accepting. A week later, the doctor woke up. Jim was there, sitting in a chair he'd dragged into the medbay. About time. The doctor blinked at the ceiling. How long? 7 days. You've got medical staff very concerned about your biology. They've never seen anything like you. That's because I'm—" The doctor stopped, smiled weakly. "Complicated. No kidding." Jim leaned forward. The rift stable. Void energy signatures are fading across the sector. Protoss are running purification protocols on the contaminated zones. No one's burning colonies. The doctor's expression softened. "Good. Celendis wants to thank you. November 7's already recruited 5 ghosts who defected, and Matt says you're welcome on the Hyperion anytime." That's good." The doctor tried to sit up, failed. The TARDIS, resting. Haven't heard her hum in days, but she's there, waiting. The doctor's eyes closed. "I need to go. Can't stay. The temporal radiation, if I linger too long, I'll destabilize the local timeline." "I know." Jim had known since the beginning, really. The doctor didn't belong here, never had. "One drink first, though. You promised." The doctor laughed. It sounded like breaking and healing at the same time. "One drink." They found a bar in the lower decks. Quiet. Dim, serving something that probably wasn't alcohol, but burned the same way. Jim raised his glass. "To inevitability." The doctor raised his. "To proving it wrong." They drank. Outside the Koprulu sector continued its wars. But the battles weren't locked in endless loops anymore. The dead stayed dead. The future stayed uncertain. And somewhere in that uncertainty was space for something the sector hadn't had in years. Choice. 2 days later, the TARDIS dematerialized from the Hyperion's hangar. Jim watched from the observation deck as the blue box faded from view, that impossible wheeze groan echoing even through the vacuum. November 7 stood beside him. "Think we'll see him again?" "Probably not." Jim's voice was quiet. "He's got a whole universe to save. We're just one sector." "One sector he made better." Jim nodded. "Yeah, he did." The stars turned. The wars continued. But the cycle was broken, and that the doctor would have said was enough. In the blood-soaked history of StarCraft, the arrival of the doctor does not create a new victory, nor does it immediately topple an empire. The influence he leaves behind is far subtler, and precisely because of that, far more enduring. For the Terrans, the doctor plants a dangerous seed of doubt in people like Raynor. Is war truly the only path forward? Not through speeches or commands, but by exposing choices long buried beneath layers of control and propaganda. From that moment on, blind obedience no longer feels inevitable. For the Protoss, the doctor does not challenge their strength, but their cyclical way of thinking. The belief that war must endlessly repeat itself to preserve order begins to fracture. For the first time in a very, very long while, they are forced to ask themselves, which is truly sacred, preserving honor or preserving the future? For those crushed beneath the machinery of power, such as the ghosts, the doctor leaves behind a crack in the chains that bind them, the right to choose. Not freedom in its entirety, not all at once, but the chance to begin becoming a person, rather than remaining a tool. And for the StarCraft universe itself, the doctor leaves a quiet yet profound legacy. War is no longer an absolute destiny. It becomes a choice. And once it is a choice, it can also be refused. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.